Hello, everyone. Ready to get started? Okay, welcome back. I think that we're going to have an interesting session, this first one this afternoon. We'll continue looking at some different models for data services. My name is Brian Kleiner. I'm the head of data services at the Swiss Center of Expertise in the Social Sciences Force. And during this session, you'll hear a little bit more about my institution. But before we go to our speakers, we'd like to entertain you for a few minutes with a few short videos.
And now it's time for another thrilling adventure with Team Digital Preservation. My name is Digiman, and I embody all aspects of digital preservation. Oh!
My name is Blizzard, and I embody all aspects of threats to digital information.
Ugh, I must remember to stick him in a different prison this time. Say, that to me looks like a construction site for a really big dam.
That's right, and guess what? Team Chaos have destroyed all of the climate model data stored on site.
Holy ozone! Are you out of your damn minds? Without proper climate model data, the engineers would have to guess how big to make the dam. If it's too small, it won't hold the water and could burst and flood the town. Or, if it's too big, they'd have wasted a lot of money.
Well, obviously, I'm hoping for the scenario with the flooding. But either way, there's not a damn thing you can do about it.
No time to lose, team. We've got to get down to that dam. Thank goodness you're here, Digiman. Team Chaos have destroyed our... Why do you think we're here? Locator, locate a backup copy of the data. Located. A backup copy stored in Germany. Bonjour. You gotta hand it to him, boss. That's the quickest we've been beaten yet. Okay, Locator, get that... Wait a damn minute, DM. I found a couple of newer model runs from other climate modeling groups. Would they be of use too? Well, yes. The more model runs we have to compare, the more confident we can be in our predictions. But before we can compare them properly, we need to know what climate change scenarios these model runs use. And all of our climate modelers are on holiday. This presents a problem.
What's that? A problem? Chaos?
A problem that can be easily solved with a common information model. Come in, Sim. Could you, if you're not too busy, maybe come help us out, please? Over.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Sim.
We're in luck. The climate scientists have stored the model data with full sets of metadata. This metadata is all in the same format and uses the same controlled vocabularies. A controlled vocabulary is a set of specific terms which are very precisely defined, so everyone understands exactly what they mean. This makes it easy to compare the results of the different simulations, even though they've been created on different computers with different climate modeling software. So, with a bit of analysis, I can tell you exactly what these state-of-the-art climate models predict.
Which means the dam will now be even more fit for purpose than it would have been. Hooray! You're so smart and clever, Sim.
Huh. If you think about it, this time Blizzard has actually inadvertently helped out.
I love her. And remember, metadata is very important, but it can be very complicated. Having a common information model, that is, a standardized way of collecting metadata, is good because you can compare the data knowing that you're comparing the same things in two different models.
And be aware that common information models are not limited to just climate modeling. As long as the controlled vocabularies are appropriate for the science they're referring to, a common information model can be flexible enough to cope with just about anything.
Sim, will you marry me?
No.
Damn. Thanks, Team Digital Preservation. You preserved the important data and saved the day, as per usual. But could Team Chaos strike again? And will Digiman ever win the heart of the beautiful and flexible Sim?
Beep. The person you have called is unavailable right now. Please try again later.
Find out more about the Common Information Model at www.metaphorclimate.eu and join us next time for another thrilling adventure with Team Digital Preservation.
So since time is limited, I'll just put just one more, and then we can follow on with the
And now it's time for another thrilling adventure with Team Digital Preservation. Oh boy, I can't wait to see what those wonderful whiz kids at the top secret research lab have cooked up for us this time. What is it?
I'll show you just as soon as you've composed yourself, Digiman.
I'm sensible.
I can see you're impressed. This suit has been specifically designed to protect you from Blizzard's new virus ray. It uses sophisticated firewall fabric to...
Hot dongle! I can't wait to try this baby out! Shriek!
As you should know by now, Digiman, all new equipment must go through the 6-stage test bed experiment process. Step 1. We have to define the basic properties of our experiment. Blizzard will be ruthless in his use of the virus ray, striking without warning, anywhere, anytime. Step 2. Having defined its basic properties, it's time to design the experiment itself. We'll have to blast your suit with Blizzard's virus ray at maximum intensity under various conditions. Step 3. Let's execute the experiment.
Well, that was a breeze. I'll be off then.
Hold your horses, DM. We're moving on to step 4, collecting the results of the experiment. And now step 5. Let's analyze these results. You appear to have contracted a mild dose of the virus. Not to worry, it's a controlled strain. It looks like there's some structural weakness around the armpit area, which we can easily strengthen and retest. So let's move on to step 6 and evaluate the experiment. Perhaps next time we could add a larger array of cannons firing from more angles to ensure that every inch of the suit is impermeable.
Yeah. Sounds great. Lucifer's laptop! The jig's up, Blizzard!
And remember, it's not just superhero suits that benefit from a testbed process. You can test your digital preservation methods in the same way by using the planet's testbed 6-step experiment process. Step 1, define basic properties. Step 2, design experiment. Step 3, approve and run experiment. Step 4, experiment results. Step 5, analyze results. Step 6, evaluate experiment.
Thanks, scientist. Find out more about Planet's testbed at www.planets-project.eu/testbed and join us next time for another thrilling adventure with Team Digital Preservation.
So this was for the after lunch. So, and now I would like to give the floor for the next presenters.
Okay. Well, I hope that has helped with your digestion of lunch. Okay, well, let's go right to the next speakers. We have three for this session. I'd like to introduce the first speaker, Hans-Jørgen Marker from the Swedish National Data Service, who will talk about the role of CESSDA in SERSCIDA. Hans-Jørgen Marker is the director of the Swedish National Data Service, SND. He's also the president of the Council of European Social Science Data Archives, CESSDA. He has worked in data archiving since 1984. He's the founder of the Danish Demographic Database, which presently contains more than 15 million person records. And he has participated in numerous research projects, many of them funded by the EU. He's presently the coordinator of the EU project Data Service Initiative for Social Science and the Humanities, DASISH.
Thank you. It was good that you put some words in between the cartoons and me, because that's a hard act to follow. But anyway, I'm very happy to be here and be allowed to speak a little about CESSDA, because CESSDA is something that I think is very important. And yeah, so let's go on with it. CESSDA, it's actually an old thing. It was founded back in 1976 when all the European data archives met in Brussels somewhere. There were 7 at that time, and they agreed to that it was important to cooperate, and they started out in something that approved itself very successful. The thing about CESSDA is that one thing of it is it's the formal framework, which is important in itself. But there's also this spirit of cooperation, that somebody gave you guidance or knowledge or tools, and now you got them, and then you're supposed to give them to somebody else. So there's this spirit of generosity which is carrying on this cooperation. So from the funders to the rest of us, we try to carry the torch on. And that's actually one of the things that I think is going on here in SERSCIDA, that some of the CESSDA archives are involved in transferring knowledge and to prospective newcomers to our community. CESSDA has been active in standards development so far back as in 1980. We met with the Americans and other people and decided for a standard for describing research materials on the study level, which actually remained the standard for about 20 years until we got DDI, which got some bad press earlier in the day, but which is what we are working against now. Another important thing about CESSDA is that every year people from the CESSDA archives who actually know what our work is about, which means not the bosses, but the actual people who know what we are doing, meet and works on one of the topics of relevance for our trade. And this has been going on since 1987, and every autumn the clever people meet somewhere and discuss one of the issues that are important for us to get further. In the spring, the bosses meet and decide big stuff and believe that they also have an influence, but essentially they only decide where the expert seminar is going to be in the autumn. Another angle was that after some years we got into the position where we actually started having EU-funded projects. For many years, EU was not that interested in social science data archiving and anything that went on there. But we started out in the late 1990s with some very technically focused projects. And after that time, we've been very successful in acquiring EU funding for actually quite a wide range of projects. And as I will return to, CESSDA has managed to place itself as one of the strategic initiatives where EU see us as one of the channels of going forward. What did I say? Okay, I was just told that I have to lean into the microphone so that you will hear me better. And then he turned it down, so then I'll move away and he'll turn it up, and then we'll have a lot of fun here. One thing that has been very important to us also is to try to formalize our cooperation more, and we've been discussing that for much of our history. But back in 2001, we had a meeting in Amsterdam where we discussed an umbrella construction for CESSDA. But this really came into speed when the S3 process in the EU started, because then there was something, so to speak, on the other side, something to relate to. And out of the CESSDA, out of the S3 process, we got funding for a project, a preliminary phase project for CESSDA, which should establish CESSDA as a centrally funded infrastructure. During this discussion, or during this project period, EU invented the construction of an ERIC, which is a European Research Infrastructure Consortium. And as an outcome of the PPP, CESSDA more or less had the statutes that was needed to establish an ERIC. So in the summer of 2010, a number of CESSDA archives signed an MOU for the establishment of an ERIC, and a steering committee for this process was formed, and then we believed that we should be the first ERIC. More about that later. So, what is CESSDA presently? Presently, we are an informal association of which has 21 European organizations as members, which are data services or data archives, as we call them. These members, which are institutions, are very, very differently funded. Some of them are very big, and some of them are very small. As I said, we started our cooperation in 76, so we really have had more than 35 years of a successful cooperation based on this spirit of we know what we want to do and we want to do it together. The people in the other institution, they are our colleagues. So in your own institution, you may have 15 colleagues, but in Europe, we have 400. And that makes it much more viable. Of course, we hold a lot of data sets, and I forgot to correct the number, but even in 2010 there were a lot, and there's come some more too. The objectives of CESSDA, as they are formulated in the CESSDA constitution, are that we are supposed to promote acquisition, archiving, and distribution of data throughout Europe, that we should promote projects and procedures for enhancing the exchange of data and technologies among data organizations, that we should stimulate the development and use of these procedures throughout Europe, and to encourage new data organizations and further these objectives, and to promote the integration of the European database, and to associate and cooperate with other international organizations sharing similar objectives. And as you can hear from the wording, this is actually quite old objectives. But even though the wording is slightly archaic, they more or less hold today also. This is really what it is about, to have a good and well-functioning cooperation of data organization. This is not driven of a particular technology, or so this works quite as well when cooperation was something about sending data tapes by the mail as it functions today, when it's other technologies that drives the curation and dissemination of data. The current members are these 21 countries, and as of April, we expect Slovakia to join, and then I'm on the mail with Portugal. So there's still interest for becoming a member of CESSDA, and why shouldn't there be? It's cheap and it's fun. But there's this issue about becoming an ERIC. And the four main points for putting that layer on top of the CESSDA organization is that it is often, in some cases, it's convenient to have a legal entity that can actually sign agreements with other parties. As it is now, even the members are, in many cases, not legal entities. So making a deal with CESSDA is quite complicated, and there are other parties that we would like to cooperate with that do refrain from making deals with CESSDA because it is so complicated. So being a legal entity would also give us a governance structure and a central coordinating body, and to some extent the ERIC construction leads to having sustainable funding, because what an ERIC is that it is an agreement between some member states who then go into an obligation of furnishing a service provider that meets certain requirements, and they pay a fee to the consortium. So this is something that we are working upon, and some of the things that we want to achieve in creating the ERIC is that we want to establish a fully integrated data infrastructure where we have integrated resource discovery tools. We already have we have some of the tools. We are very well on the way with multilingual searching with the ELST, which is European Social Science, European Language Social Science Thesaurus, and we want to work on common authentication and access. This is an issue which is also being lifted forward in the DASIS project, which CESSDA is a member of. And some of these things will also be, or some other things will also be lifted forward. These and other things will be lifted forward in the ERIC, where things like certification and auditing will be naturally placed as part of a central facility. And there will be more of training and knowledge transfer and mobility between the archives, not just meeting in the autumn, but perhaps meeting 2 times a year. And of course, we'll continue being a prime mover in standards development. When somebody wants to be a service provider, there are 14 very difficult things that you have to abide to, and you read them here on the screen. These are actually demands that they are not trivial. Some of them, but together they form the picture of what is a good data service. And of course, in the very end, you have the rubber paragraph to adhere to the provisions of the entire organization policies as required. So essentially, when your government signs this, they've written a rubber check. So don't ever tell them that. Of course, when you are a member, you also become, you also have influence on what this means. But what it would cost for a certain country to provide by this is naturally very different. Some countries almost adhere to all of this to begin with, and as I said, some of the organizations are quite small and are very far away from getting to the 14 points. But anyway, the process is on its way. And as I said, back in 2010, we said, well, we are going to be the first ERIC, because the other S3s, many of them, they were not that advanced as we were. We had good ready-made documents. There were not many commas to be moved before we had the total statutes, and so this should be quite easy. And another thing was that a lot of the money was there because the Norwegian government came up with an enormous amount of money, and the Germans also came with a lot of money. So the fee for the rest of us is quite reasonable. So it's easy for other countries to join. They don't have to pay a lot of money. So we were right on track, except Norway is not part of the EU. Norway is part of EFTA. And EFTA has an agreement with the EU, and the ERIC legislation is not part of that agreement. So it's actually impossible to create an ERIC in Norway. So we were embarking on a road that didn't really lead anywhere. And so the time since 2010 has been taken up with discussion between Norway and EFTA and EC and whatever. And the situation as of this January was that actually we got answers from the EC saying that a new version of the EFTA agreement will be made sometime early 2014. So in 2014 it will be possible to create an ERIC in Norway. But we are a little we are in a bigger hurry than that, actually. So what we have decided is that we want to create an interim solution which consists of creating a limited company in Norway, which is fully owned by the Norwegian government, which gets some money, which then elects a board of directors and fulfills all the things that are in the CESSDA statutes. And so the board of directors are identical to the people that will eventually be the board of the CESSDA ERIC. So the interim solution will be governed by a memorandum of understanding between some countries that trusts the Norwegians enough to enter into this, and then the whole thing will be established with its first General Assembly in Bergen on June 18th, 2013. provided somebody signs a memorandum of understanding, which 14 countries have said that they will do. So it's probably going to be a reality quite soon. Meanwhile, we have started a process of actually assessing how close we are to fulfilling the 14 requirements of becoming a service provider. And that process is organized over 2 workshops and a lot of homework in between. So some of our more clever people met in Bergen in February the 5th and discussed where we were, and they are now making the self-evaluation, and that material will be collected, and in June in Cologne they will meet again and we will know how we stand. So apart from all that ERIC stuff, we are still working. CESSDA does take part in a number of projects. One project which was launched in 2011 is a project about the cooperation between the CESSDA archives and the National Statistical Institutes. It's called Data Without Boundaries, DWB, and it's a 4-year project which will run into 2000, well, whatever, 4 years from May 2011. And it's a very big and very complicated project with quite a lot of partners and many activities. But anyway, it's a task that is well worthwhile to investigate. Another project where CESSDA takes part is a project called DASHISH, which is the Data Service Initiative for Social Science and Humanities. It came out of an EU call where the EU said that they wanted the projects, the S3 infrastructures within social science and humanities to work together to find common solutions to common problems. So DASHIS brings together SHARE and ESS and CESSDA and Clarin and Daria. And of course, none of them were legal entities when we signed the project, so this means that 18 different institutions which belongs to one or more of these infrastructures work together to assess important issues such as a common architecture for driving a data service, issues about data quality, issues about a trusted repository, issues about well, quite a number of technical solutions, such as, for instance, authorization and identification and annotation framework and whatever, and then legal and ethical issues, and then there is some outreach and some education stuff. And then some CESSDA archives take part in a project called SERSCIDA, but I don't know what that's all about. So that's what I'm supposed to learn. Here are the 5 infrastructures that I told you about that work together in DASHISH. So DASHIS also have a homepage. You should actually go there because DASHIS is addressing issues which are commonly important to our infrastructures. And one of the things that you can find on the DASHIS homepage is the manifesto on data usage, which you should download and read and then sign up to, because that is a little bit important. So, CESSDA, go to our homepage, use the portal, talk to CESSDA people. We are very interested in. we want to be known by the world around us.
Are there any questions for Hans-Jørgen Marker about CESSDA? Okay, if not, I guess we can go to our next speaker, who is Dr. Peter Farago. No, it's not. Sorry. Excuse me, Hilary. I was so excited to hear about force. Okay, but I'm also excited to hear about the UK Data Archive, and I would like to introduce Hilary Beedham, who is an associate director at the UK Data Archive with strategic and line management responsibilities for resources and management information. She has extensive experience of European developments in data services gained through her management of a series of European Commission-funded projects, including the CESSDA Preparatory Phase Project.
Okay, I thought you might wonder why, when the archive has been providing data services for researchers for 46 years, I've called this talk a data service for the future. It's actually quite propitious that I'm speaking today, because today is the day of the launch of the new UK Data Service website. I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute, but there is sometimes some confusion about the UK Data Archive. Sorry, there's sometimes some confusion about the UK Data Archive and the UK Data Service as it is now. Basically, the archive, the UK Data Archive, is a department of the University of Essex. The University of Essex is the legal entity. The UK Data Service is the UK service for data provision that is run from Essex. And I will say a little bit more about the service in a minute. Okay, you'll see that I'm not Matthew Woollard. Our director unfortunately couldn't be here any more than I'm Peter Farago. Okay, the UK Data Service is, as I say, it's launched today. If you go to, well, you'll see at the end there's a web link, but we've completely revamped our website. The UK Data Service, it's at the core of a network of trust, and trust is an underlying principle, really, under which we work and have worked for many years now. And it includes data owners, producers, funders, and users. All of those different groups of stakeholders have a need to trust the work that we do and the principles, procedures, processes that we have in place. We've earned that trust through the strength of our delivery partners, whose expertise is built on more than 45 years of hands-on work in data curation, preservation, licensing, and access. And I use the word partners deliberately because the UK Data Service is actually, it's a single contract between the Economic and Social Research Council and the University of Essex. But under that contract, Essex subcontracts other data providers or data services, not providers, in other universities, so that we now present a single point of contact for researchers who previously would have gone to different universities for access to different data, sometimes under different conditions. The whole will now be unified. There will be one site, one place for access for these different services. So the partners, Essex, Southampton, Manchester, Edinburgh, Leeds, University College London, and we have worked with all of those organisations for many years now, so we have established good working relations with them. The structure under which we work is slightly changed. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Also contributing to that trust is the fact that the UK Data Archive is actually ISO 27001 certified, and that relates to information security and it's fundamental to the secure access services that we provide for the research community in the UK. And we are also, interestingly, a place of deposit for our national archives for digitised material. So, our primary aim is to provide users with seamless and flexible access to a wide range of data resources to facilitate high-quality social and economic research and education, and all of our activities stem from this aim. It's about being seamless and flexible. As I said, the researchers come to one place, and whatever they want, however it's made available or accessible, they can find it from our one site. So how will we achieve this aim? Well, we'll capitalise on work that all of the different partners to the service have already done. We will select data to maximise use and subsequent impact. And to do that, we have a collections development policy, and we will have support from our governing board in making sure that we are actually providing the kinds of data for the research needs for the future for the UK and for our collaborators across Europe. Ingesting to ensure quality data quality and long-term preservation. Quality is central to everything that we do. It has subtle impacts on everything. If we don't bring in quality data, then the quality of the research is affected. We need to talk to data producers, and we do that to encourage them to meet to provide the high quality data. We do use standards to do that. There are various mechanisms. We work with them closely. So quality goes, it's part of everything that we do in a way, similar to trust. Archiving to ensure the long-term integrity and access to data. We actually have data now that were collected in the very early 1970s, and we are, in some cases, the sole source now of those data, but they can be used tomorrow by a researcher if they wanted them, and we intend that to carry on for the future. Providing access to ensure that users can find, access and analyse relevant data appropriately. It's no good having a repository with hundreds and hundreds of data sets in there if a user cannot find the data that they need to support the research hypothesis that they are looking at. It's really important that data are catalogued, that there are easy mechanisms for them to find those data. And sometimes it's not just the data, sometimes it's the associated publications, the original publications that were produced when a data set was collected, other information about the data set, where it's been combined with another data set, for example. So our new Discovery, it's called Discovery, system, when you go onto the new website, and I hope everybody will, it uses faceted browsing, so it's much more flexible than just going into a catalogue and searching the catalogue on the fields that are tagged within that catalogue. There's a lot more flexibility in the new system. Providing support so that users can get information about finding, accessing and using data. It goes beyond just being able to find the material. If users find the material, access them and then have problems, they need somewhere to go. And in part, this new structure reflects what Dennis was saying this morning. It's coordinated, and much of the activity and much of the user support actually is done from Essex, but the other centres are providing some of those specialist services that relate, for example, specifically to census data. So, who owns the data that we hold? Lots of people. This is just a quick run through. National Statistics Authorities, we have data from the Office for National Statistics, the National Records of Scotland, Northern Ireland Statistics and Research Agency and the Welsh Government. And that's an interesting one actually, because they're talking about Scottish devolution. And if that happens, then we might be looking at different legal frameworks for access to data that currently are only available under a single legal framework. We might have to be renegotiating some of our contracts, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We get data also from UK government departments, including, as I've listed here, the Home Office, BIS, the Department for Work and Pensions. They all deposit data with us, as do many other government departments, including the Department of Health, for example. We have data from intergovernmental organisations, including the IMF, OECD, and the World Bank. Currently, the ESRC, which is the Funding Council for Social Sciences and Economics, actually has set aside funds so that they can pay a kind of subscription for the UK academic community to have access to some data which individuals would otherwise have to pay for. So it's paid for at the top, and anybody who's working in higher education can access those data. That may change over time. More and more of these data are being made available anyway through open access mechanisms. In addition, we have data from research institutes, including, I don't know whether any of you might know some of these, NatSen, the Institute for Social and Economic Research, who happen to be our next door neighbours at Essex, and the Centre for Longitudinal Studies. And we have data from individual researchers. There's a condition when a researcher requests, or a group of researchers request funding from the Economic and Social Research Council, that they're required to include a data management plan with their application. And any data resulting from a successful application has to be offered to the archive for preservation for the future and for reuse. That's maybe interesting to some of you here because that's written into the contract. So it's a way of ensuring that further down the line, publicly funded research and data produced using from publicly funded research actually goes back into the cycle so that they can be used for secondary analysis. So what does the service offer? It offers, as I've said, a single point of access to government surveys, international macrodata, business microdata, qualitative studies, census data, using a variety of access mechanisms which are appropriate to the data. And that's an important point because not all data can be made available under the same access conditions. So, for example, one can get immediate access to open data. For example, data which will be deposited under an open government license will be freely downloadable. There will be a download facility, or there is already, but it's another mechanism, for data that requires a simple license. So it's not necessarily open, but the conditions are almost minor. They're basic. They're things like, you actually have to sign rather than just looking at a form that says, I will agree to cite copyright. You actually have to sign that you will, things like that. So it's pretty straightforward, and it's what we call our standard end-user license. So a user comes into the system, agrees that they will sign up to all of those things, and once that's recorded on our system, then they can download the material. And then there's controlled access for more sensitive data, which is that's a next step, if you like, where a researcher has to go through a process to be approved as a researcher before they can access a data set, which can then also be downloaded. And then we have secure access, which is either remote or on-site. So we have a safe room at Essex now where really sensitive data can be made available on-site to researchers under very strict conditions. The data never go outside of Essex. We also have a remote system where you can, it effectively controls your access to the data. The data don't go through any network that's open. It's very controlled, but you can work remotely. And again, there are conditions attached to that. We collaborate with depositors to facilitate access to data, for example, ONS. There'll be more about that later. We provide advice, training, and online materials to support good practice data management. Some of you will have our data management booklet. If you haven't and you want a copy, it's available on our website, or you can send an email and we can post you copies. But we produce lots of material like that. And then we provide data hosting and preservation services. Quickly, our governance and management for the new service. We have a governing board which includes key stakeholders, funders, depositors, users, and the UK Statistics Authority. That board's function is to provide support and guidance for the director and to facilitate activities with external dependencies. And by those I mean things like they will help us to persuade people to deposit data when they're not people that we would normally have a contact with. Then below that is a senior leadership group which includes a senior representative from each of the partners. It's chaired by the director and it's responsible for policy and strategic direction of the service. And then below that we have functional directors who have operational responsibility for day-to-day activities. The model for that is largely the OAIS reference model, but in addition we have someone responsible for impact and communications. We're involved in a lot of international activities. There are just a few. A number of EU-funded projects which Hans-Jørgen has referred to most, so I won't repeat. We're very involved with CESSDA. We are involved in the, for example, the Bergen meeting that Hans-Jørgen referred to, the trust workshops that have been run. We manage the multilingual thesaurus ELST, and we host it and are developing the interfaces to it. We host the CESSDA portal that Hans-Jørgen mentioned, and we coordinated the FP7 preparatory phase project. We're the ICPSR representative for the UK. We participate in the open data, sorry, I've forgotten what the AF stands for. Access Forum, thank you. And we're involved in consultancy and training, which is partly why we're involved in this project. Just a few statistics before I finish. The annual budget from all sources and for all partners, so all this money comes to Essex, but it doesn't stay at Essex because some of it then gets sent out to the other organisations for them to fulfil their roles, is 3.7 million. We have over 7,000 studies available for researchers. 45 of these are only available via the secure access systems. Over 57,000 data collections were supplied to users. I think that was last year's figure. Over 24,900 registered users on our system now, and over 5,000 user queries answered between 2009 and 2010. Thank you. Any questions?
You'll need to use the microphone, sorry, for the interpreting session. Thanks.
Okay. On your slide, which was called Who Owns the Data, bracket 2, you state that one of the big groups owning data are the researchers.
Yes.
That's interesting. Is that really the case in United Kingdom?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, if you get research funding, then your normal arrangement with your organisation from which you work is that you maintain the IP. There may be some exceptions on occasion, but in the main, for the smaller works, so yes, that's the case.
It's quite the opposite in many other countries.
I know, I know.
Yeah, so
yes.
It's interesting to know.
One more question?
You said that it's very useful today to merge different files. And my question is, how about the keys? Because usually the legislation have a special framework for the keys. Because in order to merge two files, I'm speaking now about microdata, you need to have the keys.
The keys?
Yeah, like individual number, for example, an identification key.
Yeah, okay. In the main, the individuals will not be identifiable for combining. There's quite a technical way in which they do it. So you get microdata, but you shouldn't be able, even within the secure system, to be able to identify the individuals. But as I think it was Dennis said this morning, it's not always necessary to know the individual. You need to know the information about the individual.
You need to have
there's
some
a subtle
key.
difference.
You need to have some key in order to make matching.
Yes, yes. There's a new initiative in place at the moment where the matching will be done. No, I can't remember the details. Perhaps I'll talk to you about it separately afterwards. But it is kind of covered. Yes. Yeah.
Because the answer is in Sweden, it is only Statistics Sweden which under special regulation have these keys and can do the merging process.
Yeah. It will be the same in the UK. It will be the data owners, the producers who have the key, and there will be matching done, but it won't necessarily, the keys don't leave the NSI. So,
maybe just one quick comment or question.
Okay. Thank you. I'm from Zagreb, from the Institute of Social Research. My name is Branko. I have one question. Considering qualitative studies, people can also deposit qualitative studies within, okay? So is there a possibility that we can use audio recordings from the interviews from the qualitative studies, or is it just written data, transcriptions of the interview?
At the moment, they're transcribed.
Yeah.
So
no possibility of hearing the respondent and then maybe to...
We actually will, in most cases, have that material archived, but it won't necessarily be made available.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good question, and I think that varies from one archive to the next. And so other archives might make the audio, the original audio recorded material available to researchers under certain conditions. So, okay.
I think, if I could just add, I think we have one special project where some of the recordings are made available, but I'd need to check. Okay.
Thank you, Hilary. Okay, the next speaker is truly Peter Farago, who is the director of FORCE, the Swiss Center of Expertise in the Social Sciences. And Dr. Farago is also professor at the University of Lausanne. A sociologist by training, he has more than 30 years of experience in empirical social research, both inside and outside of academia. He has directed numerous scientific research projects and was the central coordinator and manager of the largest social science research program ever run in Switzerland, called Demain la Suisse, in English, Tomorrow Switzerland, which had more than 100 individual projects.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Change of accent, change of model. As a matter of fact, what I will be presenting to you is pretty much different from what Hilary has been talking about. And just to make the point immediately clear, there are two dimensions. One is we run the Swiss Data Archive for the Social Sciences, but we do a lot of other things as well. Among other things, we produce also data for the scientific community. And secondly, FORCE is a legal entity in itself, so we don't belong to anybody else than ourselves. And in this sense, the program is a bit misleading. This is not an example of the University of Lausanne. This is something different. I'll come back to you to this in a minute. So, but let's do this a bit more systematic. What's FORCE? FORCE is this bunch of people here, currently 35, and they have these missions you can read here. Of course, we are at the service of the research community. We aspire to professional standards. We are integrated, and as I said, we do a lot of things. We produce data, we archive data, we give access to data, and we do also a certain amount of research ourselves. A bit of history. FORCE is a combination of several initiatives that existed before. There was the data archive already since 1992, called CESSDA at the time. There was the Swiss Household Panel that started in 1999 and was a kind of isolated project. And the electoral studies called SELECTS, they started at 1995. That was also a project run by its own. And we put together all these things, among other things, to reach the critical mass, to realize also synergies between all these activities. And we added some new activities. And I come back to this also in a minute. So, what do? We run the data archives. We run an inventory of research projects with something like 7,000 or 8,000 entries in that. And this is linked to a database of researchers in Switzerland in social sciences, always everything in social sciences. And I always say this is basically the research community in social sciences in Switzerland. I don't think that there are many doing this kind of research which are not in our database. And together with the Federal Statistical Office, we have elaborated a portal that gives access to the statistical microdata. And the portal also, I mean, we elaborated the portal, and we elaborated the documentation for it. That's one part. That's what our unit called Data and Research Information Services does, which is headed by Brian. But there is another unit that monitors social change. We run the Swiss Household Panel now in its 14th year. We run the Swiss parts of several international surveys, like the European Social Survey, like SHARE, like the EVS, European Value Study, like the ISSP. We run the Swiss election study every 4 years after the national elections. We are doing quite a number of, it's not only just one survey, it's a package of studies. Last one was in autumn 2011. And we publish books like the Social Report, which is every 4 years in 3 languages, German, French, English, an account of social and societal developments in the country based on a large collection of data, partly our own data, partly the data of the Statistical Office, partly other data. As I said, we also do research ourselves, and we do in a somewhat limited way, we do some teaching as well. We do have, of course, a scientific advisory board. They had the yearly meeting last week, which is chaired by Professor Kase, the German political scientist whom some of you might know. And it does what scientific advisory boards usually do. They advise us on the scientific quality of our activities. It's composed largely by international scholars from Europe and overseas. This is very important to us because we don't want to stay in our nice little Swiss corner somewhere and don't be linked to what happens in the rest of the world. Then, as I said, we are a legal entity of our own, actually in the form of a foundation, but this is accidental and has to do with certain legal frameworks in Switzerland. But we have our own funding, our own accounts. All staff is employed, including myself, is employed by the foundation. But the University of Lausanne generously hosts us, which means basically they give us the room for working and some some IT infrastructure and some administrative services. But the main part is the office space. The foundation board, which is the highest strategic governing body of a foundation in Switzerland, is institutionally composed as opposed to the scientific board, which is a ad personam board of eminent scholars. Here we have representatives of the hosting university, of several other universities, of the statistical office, and of the academies of arts and sciences. So you see, it's the network, the institutional network, Swiss network we are placed into this. Then a bit more down to earth. The ministers this morning said a lot of friendly words. Unfortunately, they forgot to say something about funding. We have an annual budget of 6.5 million Swiss francs approximately. This is about 5 million euros. With dinars, it's a lot of zeros. I cannot calculate this. And we have three main funders. There are a couple of others, but it's three main funders. It's the government, the federal government. It's the National Science Foundation. And it's the hosting university. And this is a very typically Swiss solution because there are some checks and balances built into this. The fact to have three big funders who follow their own logics of action does not facilitate necessarily life always, but it prevents us to be dependent from one sole funder. And this is not a bad thing, as we have learned. Now, don't divide this 5 million euros by 35 people and think that this is the average salary. Even in expensive Switzerland, you don't have salaries like this. No, the surveying costs of our surveys are included in that. And to give you an idea, the household panel survey as such, out of pocket, costs something like 1 million francs per year. So there are a lot of out-of-pocket costs in these 6 million. This is also the reason why it's almost the same sum as Hilary presented a while ago, although UKDA is much larger than we are. Well, we are, of course, as you know, collaborating with CESSDA, with EU projects. We are collaborating with a lot of universities in Switzerland, basically all, which means 10. I mean, it's a small country. I mean, we have 10 universities. We have collaborations with all of them, and with the statistical office as well. One point I want to make, because you probably it might be interesting. As you know, Switzerland is a multilingual country with a clear German-speaking majority of 70%, with a French-speaking minority of 20%, and an Italian-speaking minority of 5%. We are based in the French-speaking part of the country, in Lausanne. Now, the point is, we are not a French-speaking institution. We are a national institution. We use 3 working languages, German, French, and English. And we are obliged, and we do have connections to all parts of the countries. This is an ongoing challenge, because it's not always that easy, but it's very important to keep this in mind. Okay, if you want to know more about FORCE, we have a nice internet page in 3 languages, of course. So you can check, and I can tell you, this sounds like an anecdote, but to run a web page in 3 languages, which is always each language up to date, is not that easy. a task. And it would be a major offense if, for example, we had a perfect German page and a somehow a bit delayed French version, or the other way around. So we really have to keep this up to date, and it's an additional challenge. That's a typical thing for us. So that's it. Thank you very much.
We have time for one or two questions. Leila?
Thank you, Mr. Farago, for the presentation. What really caught my, my eye and my ear in the end was this part regarding the 3 languages. In Bosnia, we have 3 official languages, and all official government materials have to be printed and made available to citizens in 3 languages, which is something that is important in terms of respecting the rights of all citizens of the country. I'm interested in terms of me as a user entering your database and searching for something. Does it mean that you have searchable databases on research in social sciences in all 3 languages? Thank you.
This is the case. So you choose your language when you get on our website, and according to your choice, the whole communication with the website will be in this language, German, French, or English. I mean, English we have, of course, this is not a national language, actually. But it's ridiculous to have a website which is not in English, to my opinion. I mean, what do you have a website for? You have a website for global communication, and this happens to be, for the time being, it happens to be in English. And but the other 2, German, and French. We don't do. I mean, government, of course, translates everything into German, French, and Italian. We don't do Italian because that's too much of an effort, and the Italian-speaking minority they don't really expect that. No, they don't really expect that. They have since. Until about 10 or so years ago, there was no university in the Italian-speaking part, so they had to go anyway, and they understand either German or French, usually both, so they don't expect this, really. That's not a problem.
Okay, I think we had one more question over here, and I would just like to add that when you're searching for data and metadata in our database, right now, what you will find depends on the language of your choice, your search words. But our plan is to make it possible later so that if you enter a word, let's say in French, you will also get hits for research in German or data in German or maybe in English. So that's one of our plans, and it's an important issue to help researchers find what they need. So one more question, please.
Thank you. I have one financial technical question. The founding board of the university and the Swiss National Science Foundation, do they give the same amount of the money? And is there a possibility somewhere to see how did you manage the checks and balances? How do they have all the rights, and who is more dominating, not dominating, all the technical details, which would be interesting for us?
It's not only for you interesting, but this we can discuss with a glass of wine. It's much easier. But no, they are not. It's not the same amount. Clearly not. We receive from the government a base subsidy of about 1/3 of our budget, which is decided every 4 years. So we just had the end of in December. We had the decision for the next four years. The National Science Foundation funds all these large surveys, which ends up with a high amount of money, but large part of this money is simply out of pocket. We receive it from the National Science Foundation and pay it to the survey agency. because we mandate the surveys to survey agencies. And the university, as I said, is mainly in-kind services they provide. I mean, they provide the office space, they monitorize this, but actually don't pay for it. And this is comparatively a modest sum, but of course important for the functioning. If we would have to rent office space, the whole budget, the whole calculation would be completely different. So it might be a modest sum, but functionally it's important for living. So each of these contributions are important that the whole operation can go on. These are the checks and balances.
Okay, well, we're running a few minutes late. I'd like to thank the speakers again from this session, but maybe we should move directly to the next and last session of the day.